Danny Marsh was 12 years old, and he could not sleep. It was a warm summer night in Oregon, and the air smelled like pine trees and wet grass. His mother Linda had gone to bed hours ago, but Danny lay awake in his room, staring at the ceiling. He kept thinking about his grandfather. The old man had died 6 months ago, and Danny missed him every single day. His grandfather had been his best friend. They used to sit together in the treehouse behind the farm and look at the stars through a small telescope. His grandfather would tell him stories about space and aliens and faraway worlds. He would say that humans were meant for bigger things. He would say that the universe was full of wonders waiting to be found. Danny got out of bed and walked to the window. The treehouse stood in the big oak tree at the edge of the property. His grandfather had built it with his own hands 20 years ago. It was old now, but still strong. Danny spent most of his time there these days. It made him feel close to his grandfather. Even though the old man was gone, he decided to go to the treehouse. He put on his shoes and grabbed his flashlight and climbed out the window. The grass was cool under his feet as he walked across the yard. He climbed the wooden ladder and sat down on the worn floor of the treehouse. Through the gaps in the wooden walls, he could see a million stars shining in the darkness. Danny picked up his grandfather's telescope and pointed it at the sky. He moved it slowly from star to star, wondering if anyone was out there. Wondering if anyone was looking back at him. Then something happened. A streak of purple fire appeared in the sky. It was not like a shooting star. It was bigger and brighter, and it moved in a strange way, like it was trying to slow down. Danny watched with wide eyes as it fell lower and lower. Then it crashed somewhere near Miller's Creek, about half a mile from the farm. A huge cloud of steam rose up into the night sky. Danny's heart was beating very fast. He knew he should go back to the house and wake up his mother. He knew he should call someone, but something pulled him forward. Something told him he needed to see what had fallen from the sky. He climbed down from the treehouse and started running toward the creek. The flashlight bounced in his hand as he ran through the trees. Branches scratched his arms and face, but he did not stop. He could see the steam rising ahead of him, glowing faintly in the moonlight. When he reached the creek, he stopped and stared. There was a hole in the ground where something had hit the earth. The water in the creek was boiling and hissing, and in the middle of the hole, there was something alive. It was a creature. It was about the size of a large dog, but it looked nothing like any dog Danny had ever seen. It had scales that changed color as he watched, shifting from deep purple to wounded black. It had wings, but the wings were torn and broken. It had a long tail that lay still in the mud, and it had eyes that opened slowly and looked right at Danny. Those eyes were filled with pain, but they were also filled with something else. They were filled with intelligence. This was not an animal. This was a thinking being. This was a person, even if it did not look like one. Danny felt a voice inside his head. It was not like hearing someone speak. It was like the words appeared in his mind, clear and sad and desperate. Please, I am dying. Danny was scared. His hands were shaking and his legs wanted to run away. But he thought about his grandfather. He thought about all the stories the old man had told him. And he remembered something his grandfather used to say: courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is helping anyway. Danny took a step forward, then another. He knelt down beside the creature. Can you walk? He asked. His voice sounded small in the darkness. I do not know. The creature tried to move. It managed to lift its head a little, but then it fell back down. A sound came from its throat that might have been a cry of pain. Danny looked at the creature's broken wings. He looked at the burns on its scales. He looked at the blood that was seeping into the mud. This being had fallen from the stars and crashed on his grandfather's land. It was hurt and alone and frightened. Danny made a decision. Then I'll carry you, he said. He did not know if he was strong enough. The creature was heavy, and his arms were thin. But he bent down and slid his hands under the creature's body. He lifted with all his strength. His muscles screamed and his back ached, but he did not stop. He got the creature off the ground and held it against his chest. "What are you doing?" The voice in his head sounded confused. "I'm taking you somewhere safe," Danny said. "There's a treehouse. It's not much, but it's dry and warm. You can rest there. Why? Why would you help me?" "You do not know what I am." Danny started walking back toward the farm. The creature was so heavy that each step was a struggle. Sweat ran down his face, and his arms were shaking badly. "You're hurt," he said simply. "That's all that matters." The creature was quiet for a long moment. Then Danny felt something strange. It was like warmth spreading through his mind. It took him a moment to realize that the creature was feeling grateful. It did not have words for what it was feeling, so it was sharing the feeling directly. Danny walked on through the dark forest. The treehouse was waiting ahead. He did not know that this night would change everything. He did not know that this creature would become his closest friend. He did not know that what he was doing right now would eventually change the future of two entire worlds. He was just a 12-year-old boy carrying a wounded stranger through the darkness because it was the right thing to do. When he finally reached the treehouse, he was so tired he could barely climb the ladder. But he managed it somehow, pulling the creature up after him. He laid it down on the old blankets that still smelled like his grandfather. "Thank you," the voice said in his mind. "Thank you, small one." "My name is Danny," he said. Danny. The creature seemed to be testing the word. "I am Velithra, but you may call me Vel." Danny smiled, even though he was exhausted and scared and confused. "Nice to meet you, Vel," he said. "Welcome to Earth." Then he sat down beside the wounded alien and stayed with her through the rest of the night, because he did not want her to be alone. 3 weeks passed, and Danny Marsh learned what it meant to keep a secret. Every morning, he woke up before his mother and made breakfast for himself. He would eat quickly and then make a second breakfast, hiding it in his backpack. Then he would tell his mother that he was going to the treehouse to read or think or just be alone. She believed him because it was mostly true. She knew he was still sad about his grandfather, and she wanted to give him space to heal. But Danny was not alone in the treehouse. Val was there, getting a little stronger each day. The first few days were the hardest. Val was so weak that she could barely lift her head. Her scales had lost their color and turned a dull gray that worried Danny very much. He did not know how to help an alien. He did not know what she needed to survive. So he tried everything. He brought water from the creek in old bottles and held them to her mouth so she could drink. He tore strips from an old bedsheet and wrapped them around her broken wings as carefully as he could. He noticed that she seemed to get stronger when she ate meat, so he started sneaking food from the kitchen. Raw chicken, fish from the freezer, eggs that he cracked into a bowl. His mother noticed that food was going missing. She asked Danny about it one evening at dinner. "Have you been eating more than usual?" Linda asked, looking at her son with concern. Danny felt his face getting hot. He hated lying to his mother, but he could not tell her the truth. "Not yet. Maybe not ever. I've been hungry," he said. "Growing, I guess." Linda smiled and reached across the table to touch his hand. "That's good, sweetheart. I'm glad you're eating. I was worried about you for a while there." Danny felt terrible. But when he went back to the treehouse that night and saw Val looking a little better, he knew he had made the right choice. As the days passed, Val began to talk more. Her voice in Danny's mind grew stronger and clearer. She told him about herself and her people and the world she came from. She was a Draken, she explained. Her people came from a planet called Desert Prime, which was located in a galaxy that humans called Andromeda. The Draken had been traveling among the stars for millions of years. They were explorers and scientists and sometimes warriors. They had seen thousands of worlds and met hundreds of species. But we have never met anyone quite like you, Vel said one afternoon. They were sitting together in the treehouse, watching the sunlight filter through the leaves outside. Your species is so young. You have only been looking at the stars for a tiny moment. And yet, here you are, helping a stranger from another galaxy. Danny shrugged. He was feeding Vel pieces of raw fish from a plastic bag. Anyone would have done it, he said. No. Vel's voice was firm. They would not. I have seen many worlds, Danny. I have seen species that would have killed me on sight. I have seen species that would have captured me and studied me like an animal. I have seen species that would have run away and pretended they saw nothing. She looked at him with her strange, beautiful eyes. They were the color of deep space, filled with distant stars. But you carried me through the darkness. You gave me shelter and food and care. You have spent 3 weeks nursing a creature you do not understand, asking for nothing in return. This is not normal behavior, Danny. This is extraordinary. Danny did not know what to say. He had never thought of himself as extraordinary. He was just a kid who lived on a farm with his mother. He got average grades in school. He did not have many friends. He spent most of his time alone, reading books and looking at the stars. My grandfather would have done the same thing, he said finally. He always said that we should help people who need help. He said that's what makes us human. Then your grandfather was a wise being, Vel said. His spirit lives in you. Danny felt tears coming to his eyes. He wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. Vel watched him with something that might have been tenderness. Her scales shifted to a soft blue color that Danny had learned meant affection. I am sorry for your loss, she said. I can feel how much you loved him. You can feel that? Draken are sensitive to emotions, especially strong ones. Your grief is like a song that plays constantly in your heart. It is beautiful and sad at the same time. Danny was quiet for a moment. Then he asked the question that had been bothering him for days. What happened to you, Vel? Why did you crash? Vel's scales darkened slightly. The memory was painful. My people were studying your world from a distance. We wanted to understand your species before we made contact. I was part of a survey team, flying a small scout vessel through your solar system. She paused, and Danny could feel echoes of fear and confusion in his mind. Something hit my ship. Debris from a destroyed satellite, I think. The impact damaged my engines and broke my navigation systems. I tried to control my descent, but I was falling too fast. The last thing I remember is fire and pain and then darkness. And then you woke up in a hole in the ground near my farm. Danny said, Yes. And then I woke up to find a small human child offering to carry me to safety. Danny smiled a little. Pretty weird, right? Very weird, Vel agreed. But also wonderful. They sat together in comfortable silence. Outside, the sun was setting, and the sky was turning orange and pink. Fireflies were starting to appear in the grass below the treehouse, blinking their little lights like earthbound stars. Vel? Danny asked. Yes? Will your people come looking for you? Vel was quiet for a long moment. Danny could feel her thinking, weighing her words carefully. Yes, she said finally. My distress beacon has been transmitting since I crashed. My people will find me eventually. They always do. What will happen then? I do not know. Her voice was honest. My people have rules about contacting young species like yours. They might decide to leave quietly and let your world develop on its own. Or they might decide to make contact. Which do you think they'll do? Vel looked at Danny. Her eyes held something complicated that he could not quite understand. That depends on many things, she said. It depends on what they see when they arrive. It depends on how your people react to them. And it depends on you, Danny. On me? Why me? Because you saved my life. Among my people, that creates a bond that cannot be broken. You are now connected to the Drekken forever. What you say and do when my people arrive will matter more than you can possibly imagine. Danny felt a sudden weight settle on his shoulders. He was just a kid. He did not know how to represent all of humanity. He did not know how to talk to aliens. But Vel's scales shifted to a warm gold color, and he felt reassurance flowing through their connection. Do not be afraid, she said. Just be yourself. That is more than enough. Danny nodded slowly. He did not fully understand what was coming, but he knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, he would face it with Vel beside him. They were friends now, no matter what world they came from. On the 23rd day, the sky changed. Danny was in the treehouse with Vel when it happened. They were playing a game that Vel had taught him, a kind of puzzle that used colored stones and required thinking many moves ahead. Danny was losing badly, but he did not mind. He liked learning new things from his friend. Then Vel suddenly stopped. Her scales turned bright white, a color Danny had never seen before. Her whole body went stiff. They are here, she said. Danny looked out the window of the treehouse. At first, he saw nothing unusual. Just the farm, the trees, the blue sky with a few white clouds. Then a shadow fell over everything. The ship was enormous. It came down from the clouds like a mountain falling from heaven. It was shaped like nothing Danny could describe, all curves and angles that seemed to change depending on how he looked at them. Its surface was covered with colors that shifted and flowed like water. It made no sound at all, which somehow made it even more terrifying. Danny's mother came running out of the farmhouse. She looked up at the sky and screamed. Within minutes, everything was chaos. Danny could hear sirens in the distance. Helicopters appeared on the horizon, flying toward the farm. Cars started arriving on the country road, some of them military vehicles with soldiers inside. News vans followed soon after, their satellite dishes pointed at the sky. Danny climbed down from the treehouse. Vel followed him, moving slowly because her wings were still healing. They stood together in the yard as people surrounded them. Linda ran to her son and grabbed him by the shoulders. Her face was pale and her hands were shaking. Danny, what is happening? What is that thing in the sky? She saw Vel standing beside him and screamed again. What is that? Get away from my son. Mom, it's okay, Danny said. This is Vel. She's my friend. She's been staying in the treehouse. Your friend? Danny, that thing is not. I mean no harm to your child, Vel's voice said in Linda's mind. Linda stumbled backward, her eyes wide with shock. He saved my life. I would never hurt him. Before Linda could respond, the soldiers arrived. They surrounded Danny and Vel with their weapons raised. A woman in a uniform stepped forward. She had short gray hair and hard eyes that had seen many battles. I'm Colonel Patricia Webb, she said. Everyone stay calm. We're taking control of this situation. You cannot control this situation, Vel said. Her voice was calm but firm. You do not have that power. My people do. The colonel's face went red with anger. Now listen here. But she never finished her sentence. A column of light came down from the ship. It was so bright that Danny had to cover his eyes. When the light faded, someone was standing in the middle of the yard. He was a Drekken, like Vel, but much larger. He stood 12 feet tall, with wings that spread wide enough to cast shadows over the entire farm. His scales were silver and shining, and his eyes were ancient and deep. It looked like a god from an old story. The soldiers raised their weapons. The Drekken ignored them completely. He walked past them as if they did not exist. He walked past the colonel and the news cameras and the frightened civilians. He walked straight to Danny Dodd, and then he knelt. The giant alien got down on one knee and bowed, his head before a 12-year-old boy from Oregon. You are the one who saved my sister." His voice said in everyone's mind at once, "I am Soreth, High Commander of the Draken Fleet. I have come to honor you." Danny did not know what to say. His mouth was dry, and his heart was beating so fast he thought it might explode. I just helped her," he managed. "Anyone would have done it." "No." Soreth raised his head and looked at Danny with those ancient eyes. "They would not. I have lived for 10,000 of your years. I have seen countless worlds and countless species. And I have learned one truth that never changes. Kindness without expectation is the rarest thing in the universe." He rose to his full height. The soldiers stepped backward. Even Colonel Webb looked small and frightened now. "You saved my sister when you had nothing to gain," Soreth continued. "You did not know who she was. You did not know we would come. You simply saw a being in pain and chose to help. That choice has created a bond between you and the Draken that can never be broken. You are now kin of the flame," he said. The words had weight, like they meant something important. "You are our ally, our family, our brother." Colonel Webb finally found her courage. She stepped forward and cleared her throat. "Now hold on just a minute," she said. "I represent the government of the United States. Any contact with alien species needs to go through proper channels. You can't just—" Soreth turned his head toward her. His eyes were cold. "Silence, warrior. I am not speaking to you. I am speaking to the one your species should learn from." The colonel's mouth snapped shut. Soreth looked back at Danny. "What would you ask of us, young kin? Name it, and if it is within our power, it shall be done." Danny's mind was racing. He thought about all the science fiction movies he had watched. He thought about the weapons and technology and power that an alien species could offer. He thought about how he could become the most important person on Earth. But then he thought about his grandfather. He thought about the stories the old man used to tell. He thought about what really mattered. "I want you to give us a chance," Danny said. His voice was stronger now. "Humans, I mean. We're not perfect. We fight each other. We hurt each other. We do terrible things sometimes. But we can be better. I know we can. Just give us time. And maybe help us along the way." Soreth was silent. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. Then the High Commander did something that no human had ever seen a Draken do before. He smiled. "You could have asked for power," he said. "You could have asked for wealth or knowledge or weapons. Instead, you asked for something for your entire species. For people you have never met and never will meet. For people who might not deserve it. This," Soreth said, "is why I will grant your request." He raised his head and closed his eyes. When he spoke again, his voice was not just in the minds of the people at the farm. It was in the minds of everyone on Earth. It came through every radio, every television, every phone. Every human being on the planet heard his words. "People of Earth, a child of your world showed my sister compassion when she was broken and alone. He asked for nothing. He expected nothing. He simply helped. For this reason and this reason alone, we will extend to your species the hand of friendship. Not because of your weapons or your governments or your achievements, but because of the heart of one small boy who did what was right when it would have been easier to do nothing. Learn from him. Become worthy of him. And perhaps, in time, you will take your place among the stars." The message ended. Silence fell over the farm and over the whole world. Danny looked at Vel. Her scales were shining with colors he had never seen before. "You did well," she said in his mind alone. "You did so well." Danny smiled. He was just a kid from a small farm in Oregon. But today, he had spoken for all of humanity. And the universe had listened. The years that followed were not easy. Danny had hoped that Soreth's message would unite humanity. He had imagined people coming together, putting aside their differences, working toward a better future. He believed that the presence of aliens would remind humans how small their conflicts really were. He was wrong. Some nations welcomed the Draken with open arms. They built embassies and cultural centers. They sent their best scientists to learn from the aliens and their best artists to share human creativity. They saw this as the greatest opportunity in human history. But other nations were afraid. They closed their borders and built weapons. They said the Draken were invaders pretending to be friends. They said humanity should fight back before it was too late. They retreated into isolation and anger, and some people were worse than afraid. They were filled with hate. Danny was 18 years old when the bombing happened. A group calling themselves the Pure Earth Movement attacked the Draken Cultural Center in Chicago. They drove a truck filled with explosives into the building during an open house event. The blast killed 14 people and wounded dozens more. 3 of the dead were Draken visitors. The rest were humans who had come to learn about another world. Danny watched the news coverage with tears running down his face. The images were horrible. The building was nothing but rubble and smoke. Rescue workers were pulling bodies from the wreckage. Survivors were crying and screaming. And somewhere, people were celebrating this violence as a victory. Vel stood beside him. Her scales were dark with sorrow. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry, Danny. Why?" Danny's voice was broken. Why would anyone do this? Those people weren't hurting anyone. They were just trying to understand each other. "Fear makes people do terrible things," Vel said. "It has always been this way, on every world, in every species. Change is frightening, and some beings would rather destroy the future than face it." Danny attended the memorial service a week later. He stood in front of a crowd of thousands, both human and Draken. He was supposed to give a speech, but the words felt hollow in his mouth. "Maybe Sarth was wrong," he said to Vel afterward. They were sitting alone in a quiet room, away from the cameras and the crowds. "Maybe we're not ready. Maybe humanity doesn't deserve this chance." Vel's eyes were gentle but firm. "Perhaps," she said. "But readiness is not a state one achieves before acting. It is something one grows into through the act itself. Your people are struggling because they are changing. And change is never painless. People died, Vel. Children died. How can that be worth it?" "It is not worth it," Vel said honestly. "Nothing can justify the death of innocence. But the question is not whether this moment is worth the pain. The question is what you do next." Danny looked at his friend. She had been with him for 6 years now. She had watched him grow from a child into a young man. She had seen him at his best and at his worst. And she had never stopped believing in him. "What can I do?" he asked. "I'm just one person. One person carried me from a crash site to a treehouse," Vel reminded him. "One person asked my brother to give humanity a chance. One person's kindness changed the path of 2 civilizations. Do not underestimate what one person can do. Danny, you never have before." So Danny kept going. Over the next decade, he became something he never expected to be. He was not a politician or a scientist or a soldier. He was simply a bridge. He was someone that both humans and Draken trusted. He was someone who could speak honestly to both sides. When negotiations between Earth and Desert Prime broke down over trade agreements, Danny was called in to help. He sat in rooms full of diplomats and admirals and talked about what really mattered. He reminded them that relationships were not built on contracts. They were built on trust. When misunderstandings threatened to turn into violence, Danny was there to calm things down. A Draken survey team accidentally destroyed a fishing boat near Japan, killing 2 sailors. The Japanese government demanded justice. The Draken Council saw this as an insult to their honor. Danny flew to both capitals and helped them see each other's point of view. When the Draken Council debated whether to abandon the Earth project entirely. Danny traveled to Thesser Prime. He stood before a chamber of beings who had lived for thousands of years and spoke the truth. "We're messy," he admitted. "We're contradictory. We build hospitals and bombs in the same cities. We create art and wage war in the same breath." The council members watched him with ancient, unreadable eyes. "But here's the thing," Danny continued. "We know we're flawed. And some of us, maybe a lot of us, are trying to be better. Isn't that worth something? Isn't the struggle itself a kind of proof?" The chamber was silent. Danny could feel Vel's presence beside him, supporting him, believing in him. "The human speaks well," one of the elders said finally. "But words are easy. Actions are what matter." "Then watch our actions," Danny said. "Give us another 10 years. Another 20. Give us time to prove ourselves. And if we fail, if we show you that we're truly not worthy of this chance, then you can leave. But don't give up on us yet, please." The council voted that night. The decision to continue the alliance passed by a margin of 1. Danny returned to Earth exhausted but hopeful. The work was never finished. There were always new problems, new conflicts, new challenges to overcome. But slowly, painfully, things were getting better. More humans were traveling to Drekken worlds. More Drekken were living on Earth. Children were growing up in a galaxy that was bigger and stranger and more wonderful than anything their parents had imagined. And little by little, the fear was fading. One evening, when Danny was 28, he sat with Vel on the roof of a building in Tokyo. The city sparkled below them, millions of lights stretching to the horizon. Above them, Drekken ships moved among the stars like friendly ghosts. "Do you think we'll make it?" Danny asked. "Really make it?" "I do not know," Vel admitted. "The future is not written yet. But I know this. You have given your species the best possible chance. You have been the bridge when there was only a chasm. You have been the voice of hope when there was only fear. Sometimes it doesn't feel like enough." "It never does," Vel said. "That is the burden of those who truly care. They always feel they should have done more. But that feeling is also a gift, Danny. It is what keeps you moving forward." Danny leaned back and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, millions of worlds were spinning through the darkness. Each one had its own stories, its own struggles, its own hopes and fears. And somehow, his little planet had become connected to all of them. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For crashing into Miller's Creek," Danny said with a small smile. "For giving me something to believe in." Vel's scales shimmered with warmth. "Thank you for carrying me to your treehouse," she replied. "For giving me something to believe in, too." They sat together in comfortable silence. Two friends from different worlds, watching the universe turn around them. The work was not finished. It might never be finished, but they would face whatever came next together. 50 years had passed since a broken Drekken fell from the sky and was carried to a treehouse by a boy with a flashlight. The universe had changed. Earth was no longer a lonely blue dot floating in the darkness. It had become something wonderful. It had become a crossroads, a meeting place, a home for beings from 100 different worlds. Ships came and went from every continent. Languages mixed and merged in the streets of every city. Children grew up knowing that the universe was vast and full of friends. The Drekken had shared their technology, of course. Humans no longer burned oil or coal for power. They no longer poisoned their rivers or warmed their atmosphere. They had medicine that could cure diseases that once killed millions. They had machines that could build anything and go anywhere. But the technology was not the most important gift. The Drekken had also shared their philosophy. They taught humans that compassion was not weakness. They taught them that helping others was the highest form of strength. They taught them that the universe was not a competition to be won, but a community to be built. And humans, in turn, had given something back. The Draken were an old species. They had traveled among the stars for so long that they had forgotten some things. They had become careful and calculated. They helped others, but always with a reason. They were kind, but only when it made sense. Humans reminded them of something different. Humans helped strangers without asking why. Humans gave their money to people they would never meet. Humans ran into burning buildings to save children who were not their own. Humans did good things simply because it felt right. This spontaneous kindness, this illogical compassion, was rare in the universe. And the Draken had learned to treasure it. The treehouse still stood on the marsh property in Oregon. It was old now, over 70 years since Danny's grandfather had built it with his own hands. The wood was weathered and the windows were cracked. But it had been preserved carefully, protected from the elements, because it had become something sacred. It was a monument. It was a memory. It was the place where two worlds had first come together. School children made pilgrimages to see it. They came from Earth and from Desert Prime and from dozens of other worlds. They climbed the old ladder and stood on the worn floor and tried to imagine what it must have been like. They tried to picture a 12-year-old boy carrying a wounded alien through the darkness. They tried to understand how such a small act of kindness had changed everything. Danny Marsh stood in the treehouse one last time. He was 62 years old now. His hair had turned gray and his face was lined with age. His hands trembled slightly when he moved them, but his eyes still held the same quiet kindness they had held half a century ago. Vel stood beside him. She looked exactly the same as she had on the night they met. Draken lived for thousands of years, and 50 was nothing to her. But she was different in other ways. She was softer now, more human in all the ways that mattered. Decades of friendship had changed her, just as they had changed Danny. Do you ever regret it? She asked. Danny looked at her. Regret what? Everything that came after. Your life became so complicated. You were pulled into politics and diplomacy and conflicts that had nothing to do with you. You could have been anonymous. You could have been safe. You could have lived a quiet life. Danny smiled. It was a tired smile, but a genuine one. I think about that sometimes, he admitted. I wonder what my life would have been like if you had crashed somewhere else. If someone else had found you. If I had just stayed in bed that night. And what do you conclude? Danny was quiet for a moment. He looked out the window of the treehouse at the sky. It was evening, and the first stars were appearing. But they were not the only lights up there. Ships moved among the stars now, carrying people between worlds that had once been separated by unimaginable distances. My grandfather built this treehouse because he wanted me to have a place where I could see the stars, Danny said. He always said that humans were meant for bigger things than we could imagine. He said the universe was full of wonders waiting to be found. He turned back to Vel. His eyes were wet with tears, but he was smiling. I think he was right, Danny said. And I'm glad I got to see it happen. Vel moved closer to him. In all their years of friendship, she had rarely touched him. The Draken were not a physical species. They showed affection through colors and emotions and shared thoughts. But now she reached out and took his hand. He was right, she said. And so were you. When you chose to help a broken stranger, you changed the path of two civilizations. You showed the universe what humans could be at their best. That is no small thing, Danny. That is everything. I was just a kid with a flashlight, Danny said. No. Vel's voice was firm. You were exactly what the universe needed. You still are. They stood together in the treehouse as the sun set and the stars came out. Below them, the farm had changed. There was a visitor center now, and a museum, and a park where families could come and look at the sky. But the treehouse remained the same. It was a reminder of simpler times, of a night when everything changed. Danny could hear children playing in the grass. He looked down and saw them running and laughing together. Some had skin. Some had scales. Some had features that Danny could not even name. They were from different worlds, different species, different cultures, but they played together like it was the most natural thing in the universe, because it was. This is your legacy, Val said. Not the treaties or the speeches or the diplomacy. This, these children. This world that you helped create. Danny watched them for a long time. He thought about everything that had happened. The fear and the hope. The violence and the peace. The moments of doubt and the moments of triumph. It had been a difficult 50 years. But looking at those children, he knew it had been worth it. Will you remember me? He asked quietly. After I'm gone? Forever? Vel said without hesitation. The Drekken lived for millennia. And in all those years, I will never forget the boy who carried me through the darkness. You will be remembered, Danny. By me. By my people. By every species that learns about this night. Danny nodded. He was not afraid of death. He had lived a good life. He had done something that mattered. What more could anyone ask for? Thank you, Vel, he said. For everything. Thank you, Danny, for showing me what humans can be. They stood together in the treehouse as darkness fell. The stars shone overhead, and ships moved among them. And somewhere out in the galaxy, beings were telling stories about a brave child from a small planet who had changed. Everything. The universe was vast and strange and full of wonders. And it was just a little bit kinder because of a boy with a flashlight and a dragon who fell from the stars. In the great archives of the Drekken homeworld, a simple truth was recorded for all eternity. It was taught to children of every species. It was repeated in schools and temples and meeting halls across 1,000 worlds. The galaxy was forever changed because one small human, in one small treehouse, chose kindness over fear. This is why humans matter. This is why they always will.